So go ahead and start through the technique. So
the resistor itself is of course loose. You want to dictate or...
So right now that resistor is loose, so there's no solder between the board and the resistor. So
go ahead and remove this guy.
And we're getting rid of the bonus resistor.
Yeah.
Stand by.
What we're doing is throwing some heat on there. Now, if you try to put your finger there and you apply the heat to solder, heat transfers pretty quick. You'll know it. So, to hold it instead, we just bend the leads out a little bit, give it some mechanical hold so that gravity doesn't steal it from you. And we always want to clean our tip here.
I'm going this way.
There we go. You always want to clean the tip. Let's see that's kind of brown and oxidized. There's two ways, kind of like an oven, self-cleaning oven. Just kind of brush it on a wet sponge, and the tip gets a little bit shinier there, cleaner. And we apply onto the component. What you do is apply heat at the junction where the pad, the component is, and then you just touch the solder in briefly. You get the heat transfer. As soon as it melts, you can pull away. You see that bubbling a little bit there. Now you can draw it out like so. Tell you what, I'll demo here on this. If you could see the pad. Can you see these 4 little pads on the end? So you'll see with the surface tension, it just grabs onto that pad. I don't know if that's coming out well or not. And you just hold it for a second, half a second there, and it beads up, kind of like a drop of water. Let's see, we can also do an empty pad. You can actually just close that circle. I don't know if that's coming out on the...
Okay, yeah. Now the one where you got the blob on an empty hole, go ahead and get the solder out of that hole so we can put a component back through there.
Well, first what we have on there, that ball is raised. That's because it's what we call a cold solder. It kind of flowed on both sides. A good solder joint is flush. I don't know if that came out, if y'all could see that the bubble went away. But I'll tell you what, we've got some solder on these 4 end pads. So let's say we got real crazy and we put a whole bunch and we accidentally bridged, we shorted across. Can you see that? Can anybody see that those are soldered together? Okay, so several ways. One is just apply heat and just move it around and see if you can kind of draw it away. But then sometimes you'll end up messing up the adjacent ones. And now we got a bunch of stuff on our tip. So to clean up our tip, several methods of removing excess. Remember, just like he was talking about the ESD, the static sensitivity, electrostatic, there's also thermal damage. You can overheat and burn some of these semiconductor components. So this is it's called a solder wick. Works just like a candle wick, uses capillary action, and we apply heat, and that softens the solder, and this wick, since I left it on there, is now bonded, but as we let it flow and we draw out, that pad is now dry or clean. There's no more solder blob. You can keep doing that. And we've removed solder. We can do the other little syringe looking method. They call it a solder sucker. This is a little syringe looking thingy here. What you do is you preload. It's just a spring-loaded deal. It's just an empty air chamber, and we push the button, the spring pulls out the plunger. Basically, it's just one big inhalation of sucking air. So we place the tip right over the solder of interest, and we would want to have a thumb ready to, or a finger ready to trigger. Let's see if I can do this not to remain photogenic. We get right over it, and once we know, when we see a little bit of smoke, hit the button, and it just sucked up some beads of solder. It may not be evident here. I'm afraid to see what might come out here. It's kind of like earwax. It's kind of weird. This will be embarrassing if it's empty. There should be some more shards in there somewhere. Those aren't going to come out too good on the camera. There's no.
You're not going to see it, but there was something. Hey.
So those are the two popular methods. These little solder sucker things are like, I don't know, 10, 6, 8, 10 bucks. Same thing for the wicks. You get like 6 packs or so for $5. But that's a rare occurrence. Mainly with practice, you get better at the proper amounts of solder. So we'll do the other end here. So right now the other pad is loose. I apologize if that angle is. There you go. See that that's empty. So let's do who wants to see a bad solder here, or a go crazy solder? We'll turn up some temperature. And put heat, and we'll just keep feeding solder. Just keep feeding solder, keep feeding solder. Now if you take your iron away too quick, obviously it's just stuck. So what happened on the other side, we had flow. Right, basically gravity took it and it flowed through the hole and it settled at the low point, kind of like icicles in the wintertime. Again, gravity. So we do know we have a bond and we could clean up the other side. There's no need to remove anything with any specialized tools. All we got to do is just draw it out. Just keep cleaning the tip and drawing it out, and you'll see these little bits hanging on the edge from the cold tip. So these solder pens that we have here do have temperature control. Think of somewhere around 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So what's that in centigrade? Is that like 160, something like that?
I don't know.
Whatever, 1.8 times 1.8 plus 32, whatever. That's what I remember from high school. Anyway, so once we've got the joint soldered, you've got the excess leads. Always stash your deal away so you don't burn the house down. And the hole, just nipping the leads off. And if you're really fast, it's impressive that you can touch them and they're still hot. That means you're working pretty quick. But things cool down rather immediately. And just get as close to the board as you can, get pretty flush. And once you got them cut, you can do a visual inspection and say, yeah, the adjacent pads are not touching. And then you can also kind of feel, and you'll feel that they're sharp, they're rough. You can always follow up with just a quick little dab, just to soften the point. Or you can always just, once you've got all your components at the very end, and the board is completely populated, you just go real quick and you just dab everything, either wet or dry. I mean, this by itself, or just add an extra little drop. Just go around and you touch all the component points. And count to 10, and it's all good to go.